The wind howled like a wounded beast. It carried the scent of rain and decay. A lone traveller approached the town of Embermoor. His name was Caelan. He was weary from his journey, his cloak tattered and dusty.
Embermoor, finally.
Embermoor loomed before him, a silhouette against the stormy sky. Its wooden palisades were grey and weathered. The traveller paused, sensing an unsettling stillness. No guards stood watch, no laughter spilled from within. Only silence greeted him, an unnatural silence that sent shivers down his spine. Caelan pushed open the creaking gate. It groaned as if disturbed from a long sleep. He stepped inside and the town swallowed him whole. Cobblestones, slick with rain, wound through the town. The houses were dark, windows like vacant eyes. Caelan's footsteps echoed in the oppressive stillness. The air felt heavy, thick with unseen menace.
Where is everyone?
Shadows danced at the edge of his vision. They twisted and writhed, seeming to beckon him deeper into the town's heart. He felt a growing unease. Fear pricked at the edges of his courage. Where were the townsfolk? What had become of this place? He continued on, drawn by an unseen force. A flicker of movement caught his eye. He stopped, his hand instinctively moving towards the sword at his hip.
Who's there?
In the shadows of a sagging eaves, a figure huddled. Caelan approached cautiously. The figure looked up, eyes wide with fear. It was an old woman, her face etched with terror. She spoke in a hushed whisper, her voice trembling.
Stranger, begone. This town is cursed. Leave while you still can.
What curse do you speak of? Where are the townsfolk?
The old woman's voice dropped to a fearful murmur.
They are trapped, bound to this place by a dark magic. The shadows hold them captive.
She pointed a gnarled finger towards the heart of the town.
The answer lies within the old chapel,
she said, her voice fading to a whisper. As dusk settled, shadows stretched and deepened. They seemed to coil around Caelan, their touch icy cold. He could feel the town's oppressive presence closing in on him.
I have to find that chapel.
He pressed on towards the old chapel, his hand never straying from his sword. The wind moaned through the empty streets, carrying with it whispers of despair. The fear he felt was not his own, it was the town's fear, seeping into his bones. He reached the chapel. Its wooden doors hung askew like broken limbs. He pushed them open and stepped inside. The air inside was stagnant, heavy with the scent of decay and something else. Something ancient and evil. The chapel's interior was dark and desolate. Dust covered the pews, remnants of a time long forgotten. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden beams. A single flickering candle illuminated the altar, casting long, eerie shadows that danced on the walls. The flame seemed to struggle against the oppressive darkness, a lone beacon of light in a sea of gloom. On it lay a leather-bound journal, its cover worn and cracked with age. The journal seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as if it held secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. Its pages were brittle with age, yellowed and fragile, each one a testament to the passage of time. The ink had faded, but the words still held a sinister power.
The journal told a tale of betrayal and dark pacts, of promises made in blood and broken in shadow. It was a story of ambition and desperation, of a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. It spoke of a sorcerer, driven by envy and greed, whose heart had been consumed by darkness. His eyes burned with a malevolent fire, and his soul was as black as the void. He had made a bargain with an ancient entity, a being of unimaginable power and malice. The forest where they met was ancient and foreboding, a place where light dared not tread. This entity was a being of shadow and malice, a creature born of nightmares and sustained by fear. It promised the sorcerer power beyond his wildest dreams, but at a terrible cost.
The sorcerer had sacrificed the town to his dark patron, performing a ritual that bound the souls of its inhabitants to Embermoor. The town, once vibrant and full of life, was now a ghostly shell, haunted by the spirits of the damned. Binding the souls of its inhabitants to Embermoor in exchange for power, he had condemned them to an eternity of torment. The streets were filled with ghostly figures, their faces twisted in eternal agony. A ritual, performed in the heart of the haunted woods beyond the town, had sealed their fate. The forest was a place of ancient symbols and dark magic, where the very air seemed to hum with malevolence.
Kalen closed the journal, a cold dread settling in his stomach. The weight of the knowledge he had uncovered was almost too much to bear. He could feel the darkness closing in around him, threatening to consume him. He knew what he had to do. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but he could not turn back now. His resolve was unshakable, his determination unwavering. He had to break the curse. The town's fate rested on his shoulders, and he would not let them down. With each step, he felt the weight of his mission pressing down on him, but he pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and justice. Even if it meant facing the shadows themselves. The forest loomed ahead, dark and ominous, but Kalen's heart was filled with a fierce determination. He would confront the darkness, no matter the cost, and bring light back to Embermoor. The forest was a place of twisted branches and gnarled roots. Mist clung to the ground, obscuring the path. Kalen drew his sword, its steel gleaming in the dim light. He could feel eyes upon him, malicious, hungry eyes that watched from the shadows.
The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures. The trees themselves seemed to twist and writhe, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers.
Then he saw it, a clearing bathed in an unnatural light. In the center stood an altar of black stone pulsing with a dark energy. A figure stood before it, cloaked in shadow, the sorcerer. The sorcerer turned, his face hidden by the deep cowl of his cloak. His presence exuded an aura of ancient power, a force that had long been feared by the townsfolk.
"You dare trespass!" His voice rasped, echoing through the clearing. The very air seemed to shiver with his words, a chilling reminder of the dark magic he wielded.
"Release the townsfolk!" he commanded, his voice ringing with unexpected power. Kalen's resolve was unyielding, his eyes burning with determination as he faced the sorcerer.
The sorcerer laughed, a cold, hollow sound that seemed to drain the warmth from the air. It was a laugh devoid of joy, filled only with malice and contempt.
"You cannot defeat me," he hissed. "Their souls are mine." His eyes glowed with a sinister light, a testament to the dark forces he commanded. He raised his hands and shadows surged towards Kalen. The darkness seemed alive, writhing and twisting as it moved with a malevolent purpose. They swirled and coalesced, forming into monstrous shapes. These creatures of shadow were nightmarish, their forms constantly shifting and changing.
The battle was long and brutal. Each clash of steel echoed through the forest, a testament to the fierce struggle between light and darkness. Kalen fought with the fury of a man defending not just a town, but his very soul. Every strike of his sword was driven by a desperate need to protect those he loved. He knew that the ritual could only be broken by the sorcerer's death. The knowledge weighed heavily on him, but he steeled himself for the task ahead. Finally, with a heavy heart, Kalen delivered the killing blow. His sword pierced the sorcerer's heart, ending the dark reign that had plagued the town. As the sorcerer fell, the shadows around them dissipated, their grip on the town broken. The air seemed to lighten as if a great weight had been lifted. But victory came at a terrible price. The town lay in ruins and the faces of the survivors were etched with sorrow and loss. The old woman's words echoed in his mind. The curse demands a sacrifice. Kalen knew that the cost of their freedom had been high, and the memory of the battle would haunt him forever. Dawn broke over Embermoor, casting a golden hue over the ancient rooftops and cobblestone streets. The shadows had retreated, the town bathed in the warm light of the rising sun. It was as if the village itself was awakening from a long, dark slumber. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, blinking in the sunlight, their faces etched with confusion and relief. They looked around, trying to piece together the fragments of their memories. They had no memory of their captivity, no recollection of the darkness that had held them in its grip.
He had saved them, but the cost had been high. The weight of his actions bore heavily on his shoulders. He had taken a life, even if it was to save many. The blood on his hands was a reminder of the price of their freedom. He had touched the darkness, and it had touched him in return. The encounter had left an indelible mark on his soul.
He turned away from the celebrating townsfolk and walked towards the gates of Embermoor. The cheers and laughter behind him felt distant, almost unreal. He could feel their eyes on his back, filled with gratitude and something else, a flicker of fear. They saw him as both savior and stranger. He was a stranger marked by the shadows he had vanquished. The darkness had left its mark, a shadow that would follow him wherever he went.
The road ahead was long and uncertain. The path through the misty forest seemed to stretch endlessly before him. He carried with him the weight of his actions and the knowledge that the darkness, once touched, never truly let go. Each step was a reminder of the burden he bore. The shadows of Embermoor, he knew, would follow him. They were a part of him now, a constant presence in the corners of his mind. They would forever be a part of him. The haunted expression in his eyes told the story of a man who had faced the darkness and emerged changed, forever marked by the shadows he had fought to save others. As he walked into the horizon, the rising sun casting long shadows behind him, he knew his journey was far from over. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but he was determined to face them, carrying the light of dawn within him, even as the darkness lingered. His resolve was unshaken. He would continue to walk this path for the sake of those he had saved and for the hope of a brighter future. The dawn had broken, but the journey had just begun.